Becky Clark and the South Alabama Jaguars are streaking 13 in a row heading into the Sun Belt Conference Tournament. It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. We have the head coach of the South Alabama Jaguars softball team, Becky Clark, joining us. How did this streak start? What turned things around, if things did turn around? They lost 3 in a row to the Cajuns, and they have not lost since. What about the circle? They got a little bit more help. It's not only Olivia Lackie, they got Jenna Hardy. And can they take down the champs? And she is one. If you're going to be the best, you got to beat the best. Also, if you don't know, I didn't know this, found it out last year in the Sun Belt Conference Tournament. What's it like growing up with a father that's a cowboy? We got a great episode for you. It is the head coach of the South Alabama Jaguars, Becky Clark. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. Everybody getting ready for the Sun Belt Conference softball tournament here in Lafayette. Thrilled to have our next guest on, Becky Clark. She's the head coach of, the streaking, a little bit different, old school, South Alabama Jaguars. They have won 13 softball games in a row. Coach, what's been the difference over the last 3 weeks or so?
Well, when you get on a streak like that, it's always the players. They've just done an incredible job. I give them all the credit. They have really stepped up their level of play and stepped up their own, expectations of themselves and of the program. And, they've just been on a tear. They've been on a push. We've had great leadership. And so I give them all the credit. I mean, they've just done a phenomenal job.
What were the expectations coming into this season?
I don't think they were completely defined, and I think that was part of the problem. I don't know. I know we had defined them. I don't know if they had defined them for themselves. And I think now, they kind of had a moment where they looked at each other and said, "Hey, look, dude, we want postseason. Like, we want to do well in the postseason, and we want to make a run for this thing." And I think, once they kind of defined that for themselves and had that purpose, they had a little bit better idea of what it was going to take to get there.
Well, I'm going to take a wild stab. I could be wrong about this, but did that moment happen after getting swept by the Cajuns? Because that's the last time the Jaguars lost the game.
It had a lot to do with it. We really looked at that. That series was wrapped in rain, and we really fought hard to get all 3 of those games in. I knew that we needed to play them. I knew that we needed that challenge. And, I think the big takeaway from that we really looked at, and the thing that I really, emphasized to them was their level of play was better than our level of play. And that was something that we could control. And so, sometimes you walk away from those series, and if you don't define those things, you think, oh, well, we just got beat. They were just better than us. And, I just felt like we needed to break that down and get more specific, that it was the level of play that was better. And so if we would elevate that part and we would really get serious about elevating our level of play, and every time we step on the field, applying pressure to the other team every single pitch, that, we could take a huge step forward. And that's exactly what they've done.
Well, let's talk about that. We're talking with Becky Clark, South Alabama Jaguars head softball coach. How do you apply pressure? It doesn't, not a very powerful team, not a whole lot of stolen bases, but very efficient hitters. How do you go about applying that pressure?
Well, you have to play every single pitch, and I think that's something that's a lost art these days. Travel softball, these kids are playing so much softball, and, if things don't work out in one game, you've got 3 more, 4 more that day, and, you kind of start going through the motions. And I think that's something when they get to us that we really have to try to emphasize, is that every single thing matters. How you do it matters. The fact that you have to do it every single time, the mental work, the physical work. And so I think just trying to get that across to them, that you have to show up mentally every single day. You have to show up mentally every single pitch if you want to win at a high level. Now, if you don't want to win at a high level, I don't think it matters. But, you can't BS your way through good teams. You have to be able to execute. You have to be able to do certain things. And I just think that taking that part of it seriously and understanding that we had the ability to do that, we just weren't doing it. And so, when you step in the box, if you take one pitch off, that one pitch can change the whole at bat. If you take the pitch you were supposed to put a swing on, you put yourself in a hole. And same thing on the mound. If you take a pitch off, that pitch is going to get hit a long way. So I think just having intent behind what we do every single time, the mental intent, our kids always work hard physically. And that's what I always tell them. Like, they always do the physical work and they go above and beyond. I think that nowadays you really have to teach how to do the mental work and how to do that every single time, because I don't think they're always getting that from the club softball that they're playing, unfortunately.
We're talking with Becky Clark, head coach of the South Alabama Jaguars. Let's talk about your ace pitcher, Olivia Lackie. How much have you seen her grow over the last couple of years?
Yeah, Liv is phenomenal and in a lot of different ways, not just on the mound, but just a great teammate, great person. She's a very humble kid for the amount of success she's had. And I can't say enough good things about her. Every time she steps on the mound, she gives us a chance. I think that the cool thing is that we have two of them. I think people look at Lackie a lot, which they should. She deserves all the attention, but I think you also have to put Jenna Hardy in that same boat, because Jenna has done a phenomenal job. And, I think that you can put either one of them on the mound and you've got a chance to beat a good team. So we've been very blessed with two really good pitchers, and, both of them are great teammates, and, they're very humble kids and they just do things the right way. And that's a really big deal when you've got kids with that much success that, they're not looking for anything special. I mean, they just want to get in there and grind and help their team win.
So we hear that a lot, especially in softball. If I don't do it, the next girl will pick me up. But it feels like this time it's really true in the circle, whereas maybe Liv was kind of carrying the whole team. So does Jenna relieve that pressure that maybe, I don't have to be my best this time if I'm not, whatever the case may be. And then Jenna will be able to back me up. Maybe that takes some of the pressure off for you having to go to Liv all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you saw that this past weekend against Troy. I thought Liv, did a great job in the opening game. Gave up one run against a very good offense, and then a solo shot where she missed a pitch, and that happens. And then Jen came out in game 2 and threw a great game, and then through part of the third game and got us through that. So it's huge to have two of them. I think there's a lot of teams in the Sun Belt that have the one. I think Lafayette has 3 with their 3 kids. I think all 3 of them are quality kids. I think, we've got the 2 that can step out there and get it done right now. And then after that, you've got a lot of teams that have, 1 or maybe 2. And that's a big deal. I think that's why those teams are at the top of the league.
All right, let's take a time out. We'll be back more with Becky Clark. Was there ever a time where she was nervous following her freshman year that Olivia Lackie would end up in the transfer portal? But first, let me tell you a little bit about FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because right now, new customers can get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Dave Schultz, back with more Locked On Sunbelt. Let's head back to Becky Clark. She's talking about the girls in a circle, Olivia Lackie and Jenna Hardy. Talking to Becky Clark, head coach of the South Alabama Jaguars softball team, Locked On Sunbelt. All right, let's go back a couple of years. I'll be honest with you, when the transfer portal and the NIL was just coming into play, I was a little bit nervous that the baseball team and the softball team, Jeremy Lee and maybe Liv, was going to take off. How nervous were you? Did you have to convince her to stay? Did anybody come calling? Because she was really good as a freshman.
We don't talk about that. Liv is a very loyal player. We run a quality program. We run a first-class program. We do things the right way. I think that she recognizes that. We care about our players. We care about them not just as pitchers, but we care about them as people. And, we've cared about her in all aspects of her life, in the classroom and off the field, and the kind of person she's becoming. And so, we don't talk through that kind of stuff. I'm sure she's probably had some opportunities. It would be hard to, I think I'd be naive to say she probably hasn't. Right. But Liv is, I don't want to speak for her. You can ask her yourself, but I think she's been incredibly happy and incredibly loyal, and we've been loyal to her. So, when you do things the right way and you bring in quality people, it's a win-win. We're all about fit when we're recruiting. We do not try to jam square pegs into round holes. If you look at the portal, we don't have a lot of kids that leave our program because we recruit a kid that fits how we do things and how we run our program, and then we work hard to treat them the right way. And I think that at the end of the day, they enjoy being there and we enjoy them being there, so it's a win-win.
All right, let's talk about this Sun Belt Conference tournament. How do you feel about single elimination versus double elimination? There is no more double elimination. It is one and done.
Yeah, I think we've worked hard as a group of coaches to do everything we can to get 3 or more. We feel like we have the talent to be not just a one team postseason. We feel like we have the talent to have 3 and sometimes maybe even 4 teams in from a regional standpoint. And so we've worked hard for that. I think that the single elimination helps with that. Personally, I would like to see it go to an 8-team tournament instead of a 10, but we voted on that and the coaches decided 10 instead of 8. So, there's some compromise in there and I understand that part of it, but I think the single at least helps you. What we don't want is one of your top teams going through there and pitching a lot of innings and playing a lot of innings and then turning around and having to go into a regional and their kids are worn out. So we work really hard to protect the top teams, and I think that this will help do that.
Yeah, so it feels like it makes it more fun, I guess. Every like you said earlier in the show, every pitch, every at bat counts, and at the same time, we're not worn out for the next week just in case.
Yeah, and the whole point of a tournament is to have your best teams at the end, right? So, and the whole point of your conference tournament is you want your best teams to be moving into regionals. That's the way a bracket works. That's the way it should work. And so, there's always so much talk and debate about all this stuff, and I always just go back to, are your best teams coming out at the end? Because if they are, then it's working the way it's supposed to work, and then you want to set them up for success as they move on to the next round. So, I think this kind of kills a couple of birds with that stone. And like I said, I personally would like to see it go to 8, but we're at 10, so it is what it is, and you roll from there.
Talking to Becky Clark, Locked On Sun Belt, head coach of the South Alabama Jaguars softball team. Any issues with it? It doesn't really matter this year, the 2 and 3 seed, where, all season long, it looks like we're one conference, and now all of a sudden for the tournament, it gets split up into divisions. Marshall gets to be the number 2 seed, and South Alabama, despite finishing second, is the number 3 seed. And I guess it works out okay this time, but it could be an issue if, it ends up being a 5th place team in another year.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been doing this a long time, and I've figured out to put my time, energy, and effort into things I can control. And
right,
you're going to hear, any veteran coach is going to say that. So it's, it is what it is. You show up, you play the team they put in front of you, and you prepare for that team. And, you step on the field and you take care of business, and none of that matters. So.
Well, now the Sun Belt, has these new teams. They competed in football. James Madison, probably should have won the division, but they weren't because they, all the FBS, FCS stuff. We had 3 of the 4 top teams in basketball were the new teams, and now we got Marshall. Just like the Cajuns, you have not seen Marshall this year. They got the Triple Crown winner in Autumn Owen. She'll probably be the player of the year. How do you end up? It really is like an NCAA tournament early on. If you guys end up playing Marshall, how do you attack that, having not seen them this season?
Yeah, we were actually just talking about that yesterday, how much this feels like a regional, that we're going into a regional because we haven't played the teams that are on the other side. So, there's always kind of that scramble to start making sure that you're prepared for them, which, on our side, we kind of had an idea where we were going to be. So we had already started, that whole process. So we kind of don't wait till the last minute on that. You can kind of look ahead a little bit and know that you've got those teams that are going to be in the tournament, and you start going ahead and putting scouting reports. There's so much video now, and shout out to my 2 assistants, to Christina McCain and Hannah Campbell. I mean, those guys watch so much video that with ESPN Plus now and the different services that you can subscribe to, there's just a lot of video that by the time you get to these guys, you have a pretty good idea of what you're going to see.
All right, let's take one more time out. We'll be back with head coach Becky Clark of the South Alabama Jaguars. How do they take down the Louisiana Ragin Cajuns? And what's it like growing up with a father that is a Cowboy? It's great stuff. But thank you so much for tuning in and subscribing to Locked On Sunbelt. We continue to grow. We got the Sunbelt Conference Tournament here this week. Really looking forward to it. We've already had Jerry Glasgow on. We already have Becky Clark on. We're hoping to get the Marshall Thundering Herd coach on, and oh my goodness, maybe even Keith Gill with the Sunbelt. All right. Also, if you see me at the ballpark, we'll be at Lamson, hopefully broadcasting my afternoon show on 103.3 The Goat live at 3 p.m. Thursday. All right. That'll happen with the Cajuns. And if the Cajuns win, we will do it again on Friday. All right. Also, please continue to subscribe. Get your friends to do it. Again, the more that it grows, the more people that join, it just seems like it exponentially grows. And also, don't forget, you got the audio portion of the show as well. So if you don't have time or you're hopping in your car, you're welcome to download the audio before you leave anywhere you get your podcast. Spotify, Amazon, iHeart, Apple Podcasts. Just search for Locked On Sunbelt. All right, let's wrap things up with the head coach of the South Alabama Jaguars, Becky Clark. How do they take down the UL Ragin Cajuns? And what's it like growing up with a Cowboy for a father? All right, a couple more questions for Becky Clark, head coach of South Alabama Jaguars softball. All right, so there, you guys are streaking. You've won 13 in a row, but you've lost a bunch in a row to the Cajuns. And one would think to win this championship, you're going to have to go through Louisiana. Is that a physical thing? Is it a mental thing? How do the Jaguars, you only have to do it once. That's, probably hashtag always a bright side. How do you try to overcome that?
Well, I go back to level of play, I'm one of those people, I'm very point blank, right? It's very black and white. If you want to be the best, you have to beat the best. I don't like to look ahead and say that we're going to face Louisiana in the championship game because you don't know what's going to happen on our side. You don't know what's going to happen on their side. So I think it's kind of premature to voice those kind of feelings. I will tell you that just in general, we want to play the best teams in the tournament because I think if you're really a champion, if you really are good at what you do, then you want to play the best teams and you want to say that you beat the best team. So, I think with that being said, we just look at it as we know what we have to do. We know the level of play that we have to operate at. We welcome a challenge, whoever it is, whether that's James Madison or Marshall or ULL, whoever it is, Texas State, whoever we run into, we welcome the challenge. We know that we're going to have to play well no matter who we play. And that's the fun part of this. We don't run from this. I've never been that coach that when the favored team gets knocked out of a tournament, everybody's, all giggly and smiling because the number one seed got knocked out. I've never been that coach. Like, I want to play those guys. I think that's why we do what we do. That's why you put the work in, because you want to have that challenge. So whoever it is, we'll look forward to it, and we'll get our stuff together and get ready to compete and get ready to throw down.
Going back to last year, how much, and I believe it was last season, how much smoother of a year was this year for South Alabama? Because you guys had some unbelievable, unforeseen issues with the team last year that had nothing to do with the team, just some outside things that happened to the team. I think there was like a bus accident and some, violence that had nothing to do with the team that you were dealing with these teenage girls. How much smoother was this year compared to last?
I'm going to tell you, last year was one of those years that, I've been doing this a long time, and you normally don't have one thing like that happen. We had multiple things like that happen. And,
right.
I tell you, I'm a person of faith, and I just always go back to that, that, God is a perfect God, and things happen. And it just kind of helped us see that he had his protection on us that whole time, because both of those incidences could have been a lot worse than they were. They were already bad enough, and it could have been way, way worse than it actually was. So you just kind of walk away from that going, okay, God had his hand on us. And, I'm thankful for that and grateful for that because, when you're coaching young ladies, the, 18, 19, 20, 21, ultimately as a head coach, you're responsible for all that. And for them to have made it through all that and no one harmed was a really big deal and something I'm very grateful for.
All right, one more question for Becky Clark, head coach of South Alabama Jaguars. I'm not going to let you get away with this because I found it really interesting last year. I think I'm right about this. Was your dad a cowboy? Did you grow up on a ranch?
My dad is a cowboy, and I'm actually I'm at my dad's right now, and I'm actually in one of the barns, in the office in one of the barns talking to you right now. So, yeah, I had to come up here recruiting yesterday, so I spent the night with them, and I'm actually in their tack shop right now doing this interview.
So I mean, do you know how to rope a horse? What do you learn? What do you learn as a kid growing up as a cowboy with a cowboy for a dad?
Well, my dad was a horse trainer, right? So I grew up. I broke all his 2-year-olds. So from the time I was about 13 until I finished college, I broke all his 2-year-olds and would put, probably 90 days on them, 3 months, and then I would turn them over to him. And I always laugh and say I'm probably the only Division I coach that can break your horse, bale your hay, build your fence, you name it. I've pretty much done it. So it was an amazing way to grow up. It prepared me in a big way for what I do now. My dad rodeoed, and then, the horses and me growing up breaking horses. That's what I always laugh when people are like, are you intimidated? I'm like, listen, dude, I was breaking 2-year-old horses when I was 12. So there's not a lot you can throw at me right now that I haven't seen before. So.
Well, we need those South Alabama Jaguars cowboy caps. So we need some cowboy hats for the Jaguars softball team. You can be trendy that way.
I love it. I actually have one in my office with a big Jaguar head on it. So maybe I need to break it out.
The best part about this, go ahead.
I'll bring my rope to the tournament and we can go out and we can rope some things.
Well, that'll be interesting. So we do 15, 16 minutes of this. And, straight-faced Becky Clark. I mentioned Dad and a cowboy, and look at that. We get a big smile. That's outstanding.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. Coach, safe travels. We will see you here in Lafayette. We're looking forward to it. Bring your appetite. She is Becky Clark, South Alabama Jaguars head softball coach. Thank you so much, Coach.
Thanks, guys.